Hey readers, it's a very hot day here in Tenerife today, and I think that's quite appropriate because today we're going to talk about Light in August by William Faulkner. If you watched my video last week about this book when I was struggling to finish it, you would know that I was struggling to finish it and that I had a lot of problems with this book and with Faulkner in general. So I'm still gonna do a book review. This is why we're here today. I finished the book and I'm gonna do a book review. I'm gonna go over some of the thoughts that I expressed in that earlier video, but I'm gonna expand on them and I'm gonna make them specific about this book. Nice as it is out here, I am afraid that you might not be able to hear me very well, so I'm gonna go back into my apartment to do the rest of this review. Okay, now that we're indoors, let's talk about Light in August. So this is a novel by the American writer William Faulkner, and it originally came out in 1932. It is a Southern Gothic modernist novel, and I think it is my third novel by Faulkner. I have also read The Sound and the Fury and As I Lay Dying. So Light in August was our July pick for the 12 books for 2022 reading challenge, and reading it was quite a challenge for me, because I have always struggled with Faulkner, and I am sure I'm not the only one. So his books are difficult for many reasons. His style, but also because he deals with difficult topics such as racism. I studied Faulkner at university. He's thought of as one of the great writers of the 20th century, and he's usually placed among Virginia Woolf and James Joyce, who are also considered modernist writers. But out of that group of three, I think Faulkner is probably my least favorite. Now, you may be wondering why I keep reading his books, and that would be a fair question. Now, I like to read great literature and I like to be challenged because I get enjoyment out of that, which does not mean that everything I read has to be difficult. I am not in love with literary modernism, and modernism is too complex to explain in a video, but let's think about it as a narrative and storytelling experimentation that I guess seeks to break away from that realist fiction, those huge 19th century novels where there is very clearly a narrator and the story is told as a straight line that progresses with time. So in modernism, what we have is something more fragmentary, different voices and points of view, stream of consciousness. I hope you get the idea. Actually, in Light in August, that doesn't happen as much. It is quite accessible. Light in August is a lot more accessible than other novels by Faulkner that I have read. Light in August focuses on two main characters that are strangers to each other. So we have Lena Grove, who is a pregnant woman, white woman, who is looking for the man who got her pregnant so they can get married. The other main character is Joe Christmas, a man who is either white or at least passes as white, but who is convinced that he's of mixed black and white heritage. This novel is set in the American South in the early 1930s, so we have Prohibition and Jim Crow laws. Happy times. A very repressive atmosphere. A puritanical society where a lot of people cannot fit in. People like a single pregnant woman or a man who doesn't belong ethnically in either of the two main segregated communities, whites and blacks. We move between the two storylines, main storylines, and also in time with a series of flashbacks in the novel, and that is the main difficulty in terms of style, I would say. In terms of content, racism and racist violence are crudely depicted in this novel, and that can be hard to stomach. Light in August is a novel about alienation, because the two main characters are alienated from society. They don't quite fit in, even though it is not their fault. It is almost because of who they are. And a lot of people would be like them, actually. Now, depending on where you live or what your background is, it can be difficult to see why these two characters, Lena and Joe, are ostracized. And that is a good thing, because it means that you live in a better world than that portrayed in Light in August. Of course, many people still face discrimination and racism still exists, but the situations that are portrayed in this novel seem very old. I don't know what you'd get from reading this novel as an understanding of alienation today. You know how sometimes you read a classic, and it could be something from hundreds or even thousands of years ago, but you still feel it's relevant and it speaks to you? Sadly, that's not what I got from reading Light in August or Faulkner in general. To me, there is something incredibly old-fashioned and, dare I say it, almost irrelevant about his writing. And you can agree or disagree with me about that. Let's talk about it in the comment section. Now, what is interesting is that Light in August sounds like a great novel to me. I think that if I were someone else and watched this video so far, I think I would want to read this novel, and I don't want to discourage you to read it if you haven't already. Even though there was a lot about it I did not like, I'm glad I read it. I think it is worth reading, and I would love to discuss it with people who have read it. I admire Faulkner and what he does in this novel, how he doesn't want to tell his story in a conventional linear way, and mostly I admire his choice to focus on characters that are complex and difficult, and how he does not idealize them in any way. One of the things I also admire about Faulkner is that he writes for adults. His novels are sophisticated and they make the reader work, and I generally like that. And as I said in my video last week, I struggle to say why I don't respond to his writing. I just know that I don't, and maybe that is enough. I will, however, continue reading his novels, but maybe at a rate of one every year or one every other year. I think that is all I can take, because a little Faulkner does go a long way, at least for me. The plot of this novel is hard to follow, so hard to follow that I had to find plot summaries on the internet to anchor me and make sure that I was following what happens to the different characters. Now, I don't think there's any shame in that. That's why I'm sharing it with you, but it is not a good thing. I'm not going to say, however, that Faulkner's style is confusing, because perhaps I just wasn't paying enough attention, or I needed to go back and reread sections of the novel to see what was happening, but I wasn't invested enough to do that, and instead just went on the internet to check summaries of the plot. What did I love about this novel? Okay, I love the opening. It is one of the best openings I have read in a long time. Just listen to this. Sitting beside the road, watching the wagon mount the hill toward her, Lena thinks, I have come from Alabama, a fur piece, all the way from Alabama a walking, a fur piece, thinking, although I have not been quite a month on the road, I am already in Mississippi, further from home than I have ever been before. I am now further from Duane's mill than I have been since I was 12 years old. She had never even been to Duane's mill until after her father and mother died, though 6 or 8 times a year she went to town on Saturday, in the wagon, in a mail-order dress, and her bare feet flat in the wagon bed, and her shoes wrapped in a piece of paper beside her on the seat. She would put on the shoes just before the wagon reached town. After she got to be a big girl, she would ask her father to stop the wagon at the edge of town, and she would get down and walk. She would not tell her father why she wanted to walk in instead of riding. He thought that it was because of the smooth streets, the sidewalks, but it was because she believed that the people who saw her and whom she passed on foot would believe that she lived in the town too. Faulkner's writing can be so powerful. He's not perfect, but on a sentence level, sometimes he can be great. You just have to read his novels very attentively. I think his novels actually gain a lot when being read for the second or the third time. I have read As I Lay Dying and The Sound and the Fury more than once, and I have grown to like them more that way. Perhaps I should reread Light in August to enjoy it more. Okay, for August we have 2 books for our challenge. We have An Artist of the Floating World by Kazuo Ishiguro and The Magus by John Fowles. I hope you'll join me when I talk about them, and I will see you in my next video.